Qusay, meaning the little distant one, was so named on account of his mother remarrying when he was still weaning, and so he was taken by his mother away from his tribe to live in Syria. Having grown up, he desired to return to his people, and so returned to Mecca. Recognized and honored for his noble lineage, he married the daughter of Hulayl, the chief of the Khuzara tribe, who then ruled Mecca, his ancestors having usurped the descendants of Ismail and cast them out of Mecca an age ago. Upon the passing of Hulayl, Qusay called upon the exiled descendants of Ismail and his brothers in Syria, and thus he wrestled back custodianship of the Kaaba and Mecca from the Khuzar, banishing them as they had once banished the Quraysh. With this, he resettled the tribes of the Quraysh in Mecca, appointing areas and responsibilities for each tribe, and became their king. For this, he became known as Mujami, the gatherer. Qusay thereafter established Dar an-Nadwa, the assembly house in the vicinity of the Kaaba, where the Quraysh discussed and decided their affairs. Not only did the Quraysh benefit from him, but also pilgrims and guests of the Kaaba, for Qusay began the tradition of building fires in Mina to light the way for the pilgrims. Whilst the pilgrims stayed in Mecca, he would provide them with food and water, taking care of all their needs. For all these reasons and more, Qusay became revered by all Arabs, and the Quraysh did not begin any matter except with Qusay's approval. From Qusay, the light passed to Abdul Manaf. Though not the eldest of his brothers, he was held in high esteem and honor even during the time of his father. So handsome was his appearance, and so prominent the light shone on his face, that he became known as the Moon of Bata, another name for Mecca. Upon the passing of his father, Abd Manaf became the leader of their people, with the honors, rights, and privileges held by his father distributed amongst him and his elder brother. From Abd Manaf came Hashim, who, like his father before him, had a majestic and awe-inspiring appearance, so much so that even rabbis would kiss their hand to show them honor. Despite his young age, Hashim achieved great things. His grandfather having secured the political status of Quraysh, it was clear that his people had no means of earning, for Mecca was a bustling but barren land. With the support of his brothers, Hashim secured guarantees and protections from the rulers of Yemen, Byzantine, and Ethiopia and their allies, and thereafter initiated the trade caravans to Yemen to the south and Syria to the north, passing through Mecca each time. With this, wealth flooded to the Quraysh, raising and elevating their status further. Hashim's generosity and care for his people knew no bounds. Once, when a year of drought emaciated his people, he traveled to Syria and brought back with him caravans of flour. He slaughtered camels, turned the flour to bread and crushed it, mixing it with the meat to make a broth, which he used to feed his people. For this action of crushing, he became known as Hashim, the Crusher. Hashim married Salma bint Amr from Yathrib, and passed the light onto his son Shayba before his passing. Shayba was also known as Shayb al-Hamd, meaning the white streak of praise, for he was born with a streak of white hair. The wise amongst them foretold that this was a sign the child would grow up to be great. Following the passing of his father, Shayba grew up in Yathrib amongst the Banu an-Najjar clan. When his uncle Muttalib many years later learned of the child of his brother, he asked Shayba's mother to entrust Shayba to him in Mecca. Initially reluctant, Muttalib pointed out the legacy left behind by Hashim and the prestige that Shayba would hold, thus convincing her to let Shayba return to his people. Upon his return, people initially mistook him for the slave of Muttalib, and though this confusion was cleared, he was forever known as Abdul Muttalib, the slave of Muttalib. Abdul Muttalib soon became the chief of the Banu Hashim and took over the duties and practices established by his father and ancestors. He was deeply loved by all of the Quraysh, with his intellect, beauty, and generosity renowned. Once, while sleeping in the shade of the Kaaba, Abdul Muttalib was met with a dream, in which he was given the location of Zamzam and ordered to dig there. Thrice he had this dream, each more specific than the previous, and so he began digging at the location. Some of the chiefs at the time derided his endeavor, for their forefathers had searched but to no avail. However, to their shock, soon Abdul Muttalib uncovered Zamzam. No sooner had the treasure of Zamzam been uncovered than the chiefs gathered, each claiming a right to the well. Unable to settle their claims, they resolved to take the matter to a recognized female shaman to judge. And so the chiefs set out in the desert on what proved a perilous journey, for soon they found themselves lost and without provisions. Knowing the inevitability of death, it was agreed each would dig his grave, with the last survivor to ensure all were buried. As Abdul Muttalib began digging his grave, a spring of water gushed forth and brought with it delight and a new lease of life. The chiefs immediately acknowledged this as a sign of Abdul Muttalib's sole right to Zamzam and returned to Mecca, the matter having been settled. When Abraha descended upon Mecca with his elephants with the intention of destroying the Kaaba, Abdul Muttalib ordered all the inhabitants of Mecca to seek refuge in the hills. He proceeded to Abraha, who upon seeing him was so awestruck that he vacated his throne and sat with Abdul Muttalib. But soon his esteem turned to contempt, for when Abdul Muttalib sought the safety of his camels and herds, Abraha taunted him for not pleading for the Kaaba. Abdul Muttalib, a man of intellect and wisdom, responded, "I am the owner of these camels and their defender. The owner of this house is its defender, and he will save it from the attack of its adversaries." And as Abdul Muttalib predicted, the Kaaba was saved with the beating of wings and the pelting of stones. From Abdul Muttalib came Abdullah. Beloved by his father and his people, the light radiated from his blessed face. In Syria, a prophecy was foretold that when the blood on the shirt of Prophet Yahya would dry, then a special boy would be born. As this dried upon his birth, many of the rabbis began inquiring from the people about a child born with specific features. Traders from Mecca confirmed these features were present in Abdullah, and so the rabbis gave glad tidings of a prophet that would emerge from this child. When Abdullah was a young man, Abdul Muttalib went to a soothsayer. For when he had dug Zamzam, only to be surrounded by the chiefs, he pledged to Allah, "O Allah, grant me 10 sons to strengthen my arms, and I will sacrifice one in your name." Having been granted his request, now the time came to fulfill his pledge. He was told to draw lots, and the son whose name would come out would be the one to be sacrificed. And so, like his ancestor Ismail, Abdullah's name emerged. Abdul Muttalib resolved to fulfill his pledge. However, upon the pleas of the Quraysh, he consulted the soothsayer again to see if an alternative path could be taken. The soothsayer informed Abdul Muttalib of a way. Place Abdullah on one side and 10 camels on the other and draw arrows. If they point to Abdullah, then add another 10 camels and keep doing so until the arrows point towards the camels. Then sacrifice them all. Abdul Muttalib did so, and when the camels numbered 100, the arrows finally landed in their direction, and so 100 camels were sacrificed to preserve the life of Abdullah. This, however, would not spell the end of the danger to his life, with numerous attempts being made throughout his youth. On one occasion, Abdullah was traveling through a jungle when a group from the neighboring Jewish tribes attempted to kill him. He was defended by a man named Wahb, who would eventually become his father-in-law, and a fiery defender from the heavens who struck down his would-be assassins. Abdullah was the last to whom the light was passed, for after him the light took form, and though he would not live to see it enter the world it would change forever.